welcome you to my YouTube channel, and I encourage you to please subscribe if you've not done so at this point. Starting a brand new painting here. So we've got a 36 by 48 stretched canvas, and I've painted this canvas with a common household paint. I've had this paint mixed with this kind of turquoise color, and that's what I've used to go ahead and more or less just ground the canvas here, since we're doing this underwater scene. Now I like using these interior house paints when it comes to these really large format canvases. Been trying to work some larger pieces here lately. I'm going to be doing an art festival, and I want to have some large pieces that will help to fill up my booth, so kind of give it that illusion that I can fill up a lot of the space, and so that was kind of my thought process there. But it's just much easier using these larger indoor paints for these large formats. I can get a nice smooth coverage and then work from there. So now going back, I'm just doing various shades of that turquoise, going from kind of a lighter for the distance, and then just darkening that as I move forward. That'll give that illusion of distance here. As we move forward, colors tend to get darker and bolder and typically warmer. As they recede into the distance, though, they will lighten up, they'll desaturate, and their value will be just a whole lot lighter, and that'll help to create that illusion of depth. And so we're just creating some coral here now. We got these large boulders and cliffs with a bunch of coral and just other odds and ends that I want to create. And I've got to get this worked in right now before I kind of move forward, because this is going to be covered by a lot of foreground objects, so it's just important to get this all kind of painted in. And this does take a little while because I'm just painting on each individual coral as I go, and I'm just kind of jumping around between using the various shades of that turquoise, moving into some purples and some pinks, some various shades of greens. It's a pretty simple palette, though. I think on the palette I just have midnight black, some turquoise, some quinacridone magenta, and alizarin crimson. I've got ultramarine blue and cobalt blue as well, and so I think a little cerulean as well. Not cobalt, but cerulean is what I've got. So just kind of working this up, and bringing some little fish. These fish are going to be pushed into the background as well, and so I want to make sure we get some little fish here, or at least the indication of some fish as we are getting this kind of background and the middle ground sort of painted in. So moving to the other side, I'm kind of thinking about my negative space. I want to have some eye stoppers here, so by bringing in this other smaller boulder here off to the left, that can sort of act as an eye stop and help me with my overall composition. And again, keeping it pretty simple, it's mostly going to be just silhouetted in a lot of shadow and just a little bit of highlight, and I've just lightened up my turquoise. I'm really using the turquoise and the burnt umber. That'll help to desaturate it and kind of gray it out a little bit more, and and then I can use that as a little bit of gentle highlights for those boulders. And I'll be really working in a lot of turquoises for this entire painting, really, but it will be a very colorful, bright painting. I've decided to title the painting Coral Symphony of Colors, and in coral reefs are just so beautiful, and you know that the Lord was having a really good day when he was creating the coral and all the marine life that dwell and live around the coral reefs. A lot of beautiful highlighted bright colors and an array of different sort of species of creatures, and so that's really what we're trying to accomplish here. And you saw me use my what do you call it, paint gun, or my Airbrush or whatever, but I wanted to kind of get a little bit of that highlight from the sun, that's sort of peeking through the waves there. All right, so we can kind of now continue with some of the foreground coral. So I've just blocked this in pure black, and we're going to work off those shadows doing that. But I'm going to go through now and going to just use an array of different colors off my palette, and a lot of alizarin on this at this moment with these little chimney stacks, and a little bit of cad red. But I'm just going to jump back and forth. I'm going to put this in here pretty quickly. I don't spend a lot of time showing a lot of footage of me putting this in. We're going to have really no choice but to kind of jump forward here. It's such a big painting, and it's got so much detail and so many creatures. But what I really want to kind of focus on is when we start to bring in those sea turtles. They're going to be the focus of the painting, and we'll spend a little bit more time with that. But this is all really important to kind of set the stage and set the mood, figure out the composition. This coral is going to be a lot closer, of course, so we're going to use a lot more colors and just a lot darker, bolder, more vibrant colors, since this is going to be in the foreground. And we're going to be adding a fair amount of detail, because now that we are working close up, that would imply that we're just going to have more detail. It's not going to be as in silhouette as the middle ground and the foreground. And so just kind of slowing things down, spending some time. I did use some reference photos, found various species of coral, and I wanted to see if I can get a nice representation of a lot of different coral. And then really what I'm doing is I'm just ad-libbing. I created the composition for the coral. I didn't copy it exact as I saw it. I really just found several reference photos of individual coral, and then I just kind of used those as inspiration, but really kind of throwing this together, just whatever felt kind of right based on whatever inspiration I kind of got in doing that. And I don't know what this particular type of coral is. It almost kind of reminds me of a candelabra. It's pretty interesting. It's almost like antlers on an elk or something. But wanted to get this quickly painted in as well. It's just an interesting feature that I think is pretty common that you can find in the ocean. If you've ever gone snorkeling around coral reefs, then you've likely seen all sorts of beautiful, interesting species down there. All right, there's not a lot to really mention here. It's just kind of a repeat, bringing in a lot of color. I think really the idea here is I really wanted to have just a good variety of a lot of different colors. I'm using a lot of pinks and purples, reds and blues, and various shades of blues and greens and turquoises, oranges, yellows. I really wanted to get this kind of worked in here, and in no specific variety or order, but it's important just to make sure that you don't put a lot of order into it. It's going to be like anything in nature. Nature is never very necessarily symmetrical. It's never perfectly balanced. There's a lot of organic sort of structure in nature that it's going to just appear a little bit more realistic if you don't create a lot of the same shapes and you keep them a little bit disjointed. That'll really help to sort of mimic nature. And so I'm always thinking about making sure I'm not making the same brush strokes again and again, and that way I'm sort of trying to be a little bit more true to how nature typically responds in real life. Okay, so we're getting pretty close to being done with this coral. It just needed to be, I needed to take some time, get it in there, but I needed to really kind of bounce through here, and I've had to skip through quite a bit. I wasn't really wanting to video, too much tutorial information pertaining to this. It's just a lot of repetition, and it's very time consuming, and of course we don't have the luxury of a lot of time when it comes to recording these videos. So I'm bringing my little crab now, and I've mixed together yellow and purple and desaturated that, and then I'm going back over with a little bit more saturated yellows, and that'll kind of help to create some dimension and form on our little crab here. So just wanted to pop him in here real quick. Pretty simple. And we got our little starfish as well. Now I'm coming back right now. I'm just darkening here. I'm glazing a bit of dark by using my glaze. I'm actually painting in acrylic, so I've got an acrylic medium, glazing medium, and mixing ultramarine blue and mixing a little bit of midnight black, I can create a decent glaze to create some shadows once that's dried. So we're starting on our first sea turtle. This one is the most prominent feature in the painting. It's a little more centralized. It's the largest. And I'm just underpainting a whole host of different colors that I want to have kind of as a base that I'll want to utilize. It'll still sort of show through all of my overpainting, but getting this kind of first put in here, and then I can really start to bring in the detail. And starting in the face, I like to work from left to right and from top to bottom. That way my hand and my wrist are not resting on wet paint and smudging. So that's just the easiest way for me, since I'm right-handed, to start this way. But wanted to bring in our first sea turtle here, just taking some time and really bringing in a little bit of shape and form kind of as we go, and bouncing again between my purples and my turquoises and greens, little blues. As I move closer to that light source, it will get a little brighter with some oranges and yellows, give it a little bit of variety. But at this point, it's we're moving into more of the shadow side of the body, so it will tend to be dark and I'll use a lot more of that underpainting. So I'm really watching that negative space and I say this a lot, but you don't want to kill your negative space. That's your friend. That's going to make the process easier, and you don't have to kill yourself working nearly as hard if you just use that negative space. So because we're working in acrylics right now, because it dries so fast, you'll notice that I do a lot of dry brush technique because I don't have the luxury of wet on wet necessarily. And so you can see I'm kind of scumbling wet paint over dry paint, and I'm just kind of softening and blending as I go, and while it's still wet I can introduce some more paint on top of that. So it's kind of a bit of a mixture between doing a wet on dry brush technique and a little bit of a wet on wet as well, while the paint is still somewhat wet. I use Golden Open acrylic paints. They have a little bit longer drying time than traditional acrylics, so as a result of that, I do get the luxury of just a little bit more blending time. Not a whole lot, to tell you the truth, but there's a little bit, and that's pretty helpful. We can move into this fin now, and I've gone ahead and drawn in all the different plates that we have on this fin, and then just using kind of my cobalt and my teal colors and just kind of outlining that so that we can kind of define those plates a little better, define those scales, or whatever we have on these reptiles. But this is kind of the process. Just kind of work it. I'm taking it kind of a region at a time, and just kind of tweaking as I go. But my goal is to get probably get about 90-95% there, and then from that point on, that final 5%, I can kind of add in my tonal best values and just kind of do some further refining a little bit later. But this is kind of the best method that I've found for painting some pretty effective, realistic creatures, animals, you name it. This is a pretty handy technique in doing that. These same sort of techniques can obviously apply using oil paint. The only difference is that you'll have a little bit longer blending time with your oils, and you may need to allow it to dry for a couple of days before you can put another layer on top. I just don't have the patience for that. So I can accomplish this mostly all in oil, I can accomplish it mostly in acrylic. I do tend to like to come back with some oil at the end just to create a little bit more vividness. If you've not worked in acrylics, you'll come to find that they tend to dry a couple shades darker when the moisture evaporates out of them. And so, as a result of that, sometimes you can't get quite as strong, vivid of color unless you're really applying it thick and over multiple layers. So if I can come back later and add a little bit of oil into certain regions to create that vividness, then I'll do that. And I tend to stick with my Griffin Alkyd oil paints, which are also fast drying oils. That way I can more or less have those oils dry by the next day and keep working, and I don't have to wait days or weeks when I use those. I also like to treat my paintings. I like to isolate them. I have a video on isolating paintings, but it's really mixing mineral spirits or turpentine 50-50 with like a Alkyd medium, and you can paint that 50-50 blend over your paintings. That'll sort of lock them in, that'll protect them, and then you can put your varnish on. But I usually have to wait about a week to do that, and then I can varnish. And so even if I'm working in oil paints, because I'm using the fast drying Griffin oil paints, then I can usually varnish in about a week after I've painted the painting, once I've had that isolation coat put in, so that's pretty handy. All right, so I'm coming back and again adding more glaze to kind of darken some regions here, and I've opted just to use my Griffin fast drying oil paints, and that's kind of what I'm using to glaze, kind of an ultramarine blue and a little bit of midnight black. And so now we're starting the second turtle. Now this is really kind of a repetition of the first turtle, but of course we are working a different angle now, and we're going to add a couple little bit different kind of variety of colors, I think, as well. If you're hearing any banging in the background, of course that's my grandson. He gets pretty busy and active. He's 3 years old, and he likes to skip and hop and jump, and sometimes he ends up making quite a bit of racket when I'm trying to record, so that it happens sometimes. So hopefully that's not too disruptive for you. All right, so kind of again working from top to bottom, from left to right, and just kind of working in little zones, working the shell first, then getting into the back flipper, and then I can move on to the front, and really just kind of following some of those basic same protocols that we did with the first turtle, and keeping in mind that the light source is coming from the upper left. So as I'm kind of moving away, I'm keeping my colors a little darker and more cool, since it's sort of facing away from that light source. And I'll come back here and I'll kind of tweak as I go a little bit, but this is really kind of the basic approach I like to take, much like we did with the first one. And you can probably hear that banging once again, so again I apologize, and hopefully that's not too disruptive for you. So these types of paintings are fun, they're unique, but I really enjoy them. I like all the color, and you can create a lot of cool, interesting depth to them as well. You can really see how these foreground sea turtles are really pushing that cliff deeper into the background, and it's always kind of exciting to see that. So we can bring our little face in now, and kind of the same way here. It's going to be mostly in shadow. We're going to use a lot of that underpainting though, and I can scumble on kind of the pre-mixed colors and kind of bring those in right before I really come in with those deeper definitions and highlights. As I said, I'm going to be doing this art festival. I live here in Florida, and they've got quite a few of them. I live in the Orlando area, so there's quite a few that kind of crop up in the area. And since we just moved out here to Orlando about 7 or 8 months ago, I've not done them out here, but they seem like they're very well attended, and so I'm pretty excited to get some of these paintings in there. It seems like these seascapes, and I don't even know if you can call this a seascape since it's actually under the ocean, but for lack of a good term for ocean scenes from down below, we can still maybe call it an oceanscape or seascape below the surface. But they tend to be pretty popular, I think, because we live right by the ocean, and there's a lot of beautiful wildlife, and I think people tend to really enjoy these. So I think it should be a pretty good hit for the show. And they're just a lot of fun to do. I've been trying to get out and challenge myself a lot more with different varieties of subject matter, because I tend to get kind of bored with things too, and I really like to try to create stories with my paintings. So I think this one kind of tells kind of an interesting story that we can kind of make up ourselves as we see it, and maybe that story will be different for each person that sees it, but hopefully, it's something that speaks to people who see it, which is my goal whenever I paint. I really want to communicate something deep within as I'm doing my work. All right, so we've got our little baby sea turtle here. And, I kind of felt that this whole family of sea turtles might be kind of interesting, but we all like the little babies, so wanted to have a cute little turtle here that's kind of swimming up here, and we can call it the mom and dad. I don't really think that's accurate. I think these turtles are birthed on the shore under the sand, and they end up hatching on their own and making a mad dash back to the ocean in the hopes that they don't get swallowed up by seagulls or pelicans or other creatures. And it's kind of a rough survival for these creatures. A large number of them don't exist or don't make it to beyond hatching because they do get scooped up, and luckily there's so many hundreds or thousands of them that are hatched up on the shore that as they make a huge rush for the waves, that at least some of them are making it out to the ocean and are surviving and are procreating, but perhaps mom and dad are absent. Well, in my world, mom and dad are right here, right by the baby. So baby made it, and the parents are protecting it, and we can make up these little stories in our minds, and we can do that as artists. This is our world, so that's always the great thing about creating our own worlds. In our worlds, just like Bob Ross used to say, we can make those happy things that exist, and we can forget all the ugliness in the world and really focus on the things that are beautiful and bring us joy and hope and happiness. So that's kind of what I like to try to communicate in my art. All right, so we're kind of coming along with this last little turtle here, and get her all painted in real quick, and shouldn't take too long. She's a lot smaller than the others and didn't take nearly as long, but it was a pretty long process for this painting, and it was, I think I dedicated some, 22 hours or so into the painting within about a week or two, and it was a lot of fun, a good process, and always learn something new as I do these things. Now you see me painting on some yellow green, so good color. I wanted to get some kind of reflected highlights from the sandy floor of the ocean here, and so kind of painting in a little bit of that green to create a bit of reflected highlight. It's just fun to watch these things come alive. It takes a while. I do like to use smaller brushes so I can really have that control on what I'm painting, but just with a little bit of practice, a little bit of patience, and it's amazing to see these things kind of come alive. It's always a lot of fun. And there goes my grandson banging around again. So but certainly appreciate you watching the video, and I appreciate you subscribing, and please share the video, and please make comments and suggestions. I appreciate all those, and we'll be looking forward to creating another painting here real soon. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll meet again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.